other rights of free speech and the press and assembly. These other rights, guaranteed by the First Amendment, are derivative rights. They derive from the fundamental right to be able to petition the government for and to hold them accountable. The right to petition is a distinctive, substantive right from which other substantive First Amendment rights were derived. The rights of free speech, press, and assembly originated as derivative rights insofar as they were necessary to protect the pre-existing right of petition. Free speech rights first developed because members of Parliament needed to discuss freely the petitions they received. What good is the right to petition if Parliament couldn't get together and talk about these petitions that they were getting, from the people? Publications needed to discuss freely the petitions they received. Publications reporting petitions were the first to receive protection from the frequent prosecution against the press for seditious libel, and public meetings to prepare petitions led to recognition of the right of public assembly. So these other rights were derivative rights. There was a pre-existing right, the right to hold the government accountable, the right to petition for redress of grievances. And Congress must respond. The historical, these 2 pages here are from extensive research that we and other scholars have pulled together since 1986. And recorded history shows that Congress must respond. They have an obligation. Government officials have an obligation to respond to petitions for redress of grievances. Let's look at the Declaration of Independence. What we're doing here now is trying to get some, no court has ever declared what it means, but what we're trying to do here is get some understanding of the power, the meaning of this right to petition for redress of grievances. And we can go to the Declaration of Independence, which provides a very powerful element of the overall meaning of those last 10 words. So here's the Declaration of Independence. And we know, of course, that in the first paragraph, it's simply the founders saying, look, we're doing something pretty significant here. Out of respect for the opinion of all mankind, we should explain why we're doing this, why we're separating from Great Britain. And in the first paragraph, it simply says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect for the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So they want to declare the causes. And this next long paragraph contains the language that most of you are familiar with, and that gets used often, gets quoted often. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Those rights, you have those rights, they're individual rights, simply because you are alive. For no other reason, you have individual, natural, unalienable rights. They do not come from your government, they come from the Creator. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Job of government is to secure those rights. No more, no less. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute no government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established, remember, England was ruling those colonies for a long time, 150 years, and of course our government has been ruling us over 200 years. So, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having the same, the direct object, the establishment of an absolute tyranny over the states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. So they then set out to prove this. The Declaration of Independence is 5 pages. 3 of those pages are devoted to the listing of the grievances that they had against the government of their day. And we'll just not go through every one of them. I'll just scroll down and leave them up there for a moment, and you can see what some of those grievances were. And frankly, if you go home and you study these, you'll see that we're suffering many of those grievances all over again. So this is 3 out of the 5 pages, just a listing of the grievances. He's refused to assent to the laws. I mean, the supreme law of our land is the Constitution, and government refuses, to recognize and assent to the law, as we'll see. We've got a judiciary that's highly politicized. It's very corrupt, as they did. Imposing taxes on us without our consent. We've just seen the government give or lend public money or credit to private corporations for a decidedly private purpose without any authority to do so. There's absolutely nothing in the Constitution that authorizes the government to do what they're doing with public funds. To say nothing about the constitutionality of the Federal Reserve. There's no authority in the Constitution, stealthily or otherwise, to develop a North American Union, to basically obliterate our northern and southern boundaries. Where do they get that authority? Anyway, now, so you get down to the bottom of that, and then you have what the scholars call the capstone grievance. This is more than any other reason, I believe, why they decided to separate. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. It's what the scholars call the capstone grievance. It caps all the others. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince or a government whose character is thus marked by every act which would define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Those 2 sentences, that short paragraph, made it through every draft of the Declaration of Independence with the exception of the addition of one word, the word free, before people. So they had been petitioning since the end of the French and Indian War, and all of their petitions had been answered only with repeated injury. They were getting nowhere, and they decided then to separate. So the rest of this, it's basically, we're out of here. If you don't like it, come get us. In every stage of these oppressions, we petition for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A government whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is thus unfit to be the ruler of a free people.